with the year of 2023 about to wrap up in just a few days now, there's a lot of talk in the MMA and UFC community who had the best 2023. I've gone over who I believe should win Fighter of the Year, but how it's looking, he's not even in the running, and we'll get to that when we get there. So I've decided to make sure everybody is involved here. I'm going to include every fighter that I think has had a noteworthy year. The reason I say noteworthy is if you did not get the best year of your entire career, you still had a great year. Some fighters had a good year. Most had decent, and I'm going to go over a few that I believe just had a horrible year this year. But before we begin, please consider a like, comment, subscribe. Helps me in the algorithm. You guys have already done so much for me. We're at 2,000 subscribers, a little bit more than that, which is wild. Started off at 400 at the start of the month. Thank you, everybody. And let's get back to it. So, how am I rating this, okay? I'm going to go over what they've achieved in just this year. We're not counting December. However, there's some stuff from last year that kind of goes into account. You'll understand in a minute. But we're going to go through, no particular order, over what type of year they've had. Number one is Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is in the running for Fighter of the Year. I think that's a little bit too crazy. He did have a great year this year. Absolutely insane. Starts off the year as the middleweight champion of the world. Loses to Israel Adesanya. Beats Jan Blachowicz, a former champion. And then wins the light heavyweight belt against Yuri Prochazka at the end of the year as the main event, or was the co-main event to Jon Jones. Great fight. Great card. 100% is in the great category. Great year for him. Now on the opposite side of the spectrum, Israel Adesanya. Now you understand what I mean by noteworthy. Adesanya had a terrible year, dude. He went from being considered by most people as the best middleweight of all time. I would always say he was probably the second. And the reason why he's going to be stuck at second for the rest of his career is because of Strickland, somebody else that we're going to get to. But bro's legacy has been forever tarnished because of this 1 year. And for that, bro has had a bad year. Easily. Jon Jones. I would actually argue Alex Pereira had a better year than Jon. Because Jon Jones comes back, wins the heavyweight belt, then gets injured and is robbed of his retirement. And now what it's looking like is he's still going to fight Stipe, but not Tom Aspinall. And that will put a question on the legacy of Jon when it does come to heavyweight. That is not good. However, because he was able to do what he was able to do at arguably the best card of the entire year, he had a good year. He had a really good year. Not great, but good. Alessandro Pantoja. Good year. I would say that they're near the same level, purely because Pantoja wins the belt in a Fight of the Year performance against Brennan Moreno as an underdog. Becomes, in my opinion, he is now a fan favorite in my eyes. I like Pantoja. And I think he will gain a fan base within the next couple of, maybe the next 6 months, maybe the next year. I think he'll be a fan favorite by this time next year, if he can maintain the belt. And he beats Roy Val. 2 wins, 1 title defense, wins the belt, and is now in the running as one of the best flyweights because it's Demetrius Johnson and everybody else. Good year for Alexandre Pantoja. Justin Gaethje. This is difficult. I would either say good or great, but I need to put a line in the sand, and I'm going to say good again. Why do I say that? Because Justin Gaethje was able to get it back, make a bag and a half against not just Dustin Poirier for the BMF belt, but proves that he has improved as a striker against somebody like Rafael Fiziev, somebody that many people thought he was going to lose to, and he is able to outstrike him and finally proves that he's not allergic to takedowns. He actually was able to score a takedown in a fight in the UFC. Good year, just beneath great. I would actually argue he's above Pantoja for that reason. I understand he won a belt. He won a BMF title. That means something. Alexander Volkanovski. This one's tough. Because, you know what? Great. Hear me out. Before the start of this year, Volkanovski was not a fan favorite fighter. It took a long time. Volkanovski has worked for his fan favorite status more than any other fighter in the UFC. I guarantee it. Bro had to beat Max Holloway 3 times to prove that he is better. He had to prove his dominance over featherweight to get a chance to go up the lightweight. Proves us all wrong by having a competitive fight against Islam Makhachev in the first fight. Becomes a Giga Chad in the community for stepping up on 10 days notice against Islam Makhachev. The worst thing that happened to him this entire year was losing to Islam on 10 days notice. But I think he had a great year because now everybody knows the name Alexander the Great Volkanovski. And Alexander the Great, bro, had a great year. Sorry for the pun, but for real, bro had a great year. Islam Makhachev, great year. Not fighter of the year. Not fighter of the year. I will give Islam credit. Not enough people do give him this credit to him. He fought Volkanovski in Perth, Australia. You went into the belly of the beast to fight their fan favorite guy, who many people did underrate. He was the pound for pound best fighter in the UFC, but people did not treat him as such. People doubted Islam, including myself. I'm not saying I wasn't doubting Islam here. I thought Islam was gonna beat Volk, but I didn't think he was as good as he was. And Islam has proven just how good he is as a fighter, and for that reason, he had a great year. Just above good. He deserves to be in this echelon. Tom Aspinall. Good year. Not a great year because he also found out that he's not going to be able to fight Stipe or John Jones, and it's looking like he's not going to be able to fight until September, or unless he gets a super fight with Alex Pereira, but he has to pause his entire career because of this guy right here. So I would say good year. He comes back after an injury, beats Tybura, wins the heavyweight interim belt against Sergey Pavlovich on a short notice fight. That's a good year. That's a really good year for the guy. Cyril Gane, bad year. Biggest fumble of this entire year. The fact is, he would have been able to fight Tom Aspinall if he didn't discredit Tom so badly. But now we're in a situation where bro is begging for a heavyweight interim title shot because Tom Aspinall was able to get it done and step up and do it. Other than that, Cyril Gane beat Sergey Spivak, basically a beanbag that can grapple, and his most notable win was against Derek Lewis. I know that sounds mean, but watch that fight back and tell me those two guys are at the same skill level. Cyril Gane had a bad year for that reason. I mean, you might be able to argue, actually, I'll put it in decent just because he was able to get a win. Next up is Alexa Grasso. Great year. Yeah, great year. Her entire career completely changed because of this 1 year in her career. I know that's a lot of years, but Alexa Grasso did good. And I put her on the tier list for most memorable moments of the year, and it was the Alexa Grasso versus Shevchenko, their first fight. That was insane. Even if you don't like women's MMA, and I'm not a huge fan of women's MMA, that was one of the best moments of the entire year, just in MMA, period. That was a great fight. Now, the second fight was meh, but she was able to retain the belt. I would say great. If she was a dude, I think you'd have to skew it down, but because this is women's MMA, and let's be real here, women's MMA is basically Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes, and now Zhang Weili versus everybody else, and Alexa Grasso was able to prove that wrong, and she is now a fan favorite name. Yeah, great year for her. Jamal Hill. Decent. I think he had a decent year. He won the title against Glover Teixeira. Underrated performance. Underrated fighter. However, despite beating Glover, is still beneath Yuri Prohaska in the pound-for-pound rankings, and I believe in his own division. It's looking like he's not going to be able to fight Alex Pereira next. He is guaranteed a title shot upon his return because he vacated the belt. That is the agreement. And that's why we're above bad. However, ruptured his Achilles and is now having this whole domestic abuse thing going on. Decent year because he was able to beat Glover. If he didn't beat Glover, this would be a bad year. Valentina Shevchenko, bad. gets finished by Alexa Grasso. It is now being questioned of how good Valentina is in like the pound for pound women's MMA list. And you can say she got robbed in the second fight that she had. So now her legacy goes down even further, and it's looking like the next fight for Alexa Grasso is going to be Zhang Wei Li. So yeah, that's really rough. So I'm going to say bad year for her. Sean O'Malley. Another great year if you think about it. O'Malley has gone from star prospect to superstar. If you don't think that's true, it's because you haven't seen what the UFC is going to do in bantamweight because he's champion. Him becoming champion, and this is not a hyperbole, this is not a glaze. Sean O'Malley becoming champion at bantamweight is going to be one of the best things to ever happen to that division, because now there's going to be much more marketing dollars, attention on that division. You're going to have stars like Song Yadong in the future that are going to become huge fan favorites because of the attention that O'Malley's going to bring to it. And he was able to beat Aljamain Sterling. Like, that's crazy, dude. Great year. Good job, O'Malley. I know I put you in extremely soy in my soy boy tier list, which you should definitely check out, by the way. Doesn't change the fact that bro had a great year. Aljamain Sterling. Bad. Aljamain Sterling got done so dirty, dude. Because the fact is I think the UFC gave up on him after the Cejudo fight, because that card was pretty trash, I'm not even going to lie. As a lot of people were saying I was too hard on it, maybe I was. Doesn't change the fact that it was the worst card of the entire year. A Nunes versus Aldana was a better value for your money than the Cejudo versus Aljamain card. And they made him fight on 2 months' notice. And when people saying, well, that's 8 weeks, that's not really notice. There is not a champion on earth that wants to face off with a challenger the night right after he wins a decision that was a split decision. And Aljamain has trouble cutting weight. 100% that was a factor in that KO. The determining factor, probably not. Bro had a bad year. Absolutely had a bad year. Khamzat Chimaev. Decent. He had a decent year. Why do I say that? Because Khamzat Chimaev only was able to fight Kamaru Usman, a guy who we've all wanted him to fight at one point in his career. However, we wanted this at welterweight. We wanted it for the title. They do it for 3 rounds. A Kamaru Usman who is coming off the couch, 10 days notice. He was supposed to fight Paulo Costa. And then Dana was saying that it was a number 1 contenders match. The performance wasn't good enough on the part of Khamzat to warrant a number 1 contenders match. Bro was getting outstruck by Kamaru. Not even like power-wise, but like actually striking. He was getting outclassed. Had a great first round performance. Looked amazing. I think he beats a lot of people. However, I think he loses the first 5-round fight he gets into, frankly. The first 5-round fight that goes past the first round, I think he loses. But yeah, Khamzat Chimaev had a decent year purely because we thought Khamzat was going to win a belt this year, or at least be the number 1 contender, and it ends off being, dude, Brennan Allen is ranked higher than you. That's rough. Decent year. Think of it like that. Leon Edwards, good year. Good year. So, why do I say good and not great? If he head kick KO'd Colby Covington, great year. Great year. But what ended up happening is Leon Edwards was able to definitively prove that he was the welterweight champion in beating Kamaru Usman in the trilogy. But then gets to fight Colby Covington. Oh, another thing. So a lot of people blame Leon for not fighting earlier. Upon doing more research into it, Leon was actually supposed to fight on the Jones card, and a rumor for why that wasn't supposed to happen is Jones said that he would never fight on the same card as Colby. So there's actually reason to believe that the reason the fight didn't take place sooner is because of Colby Covington and the drama between Colby and Jones. So let's not blame Leon completely for that. But Leon Edwards had a good year. If he KO'd Colby Covington, great year. And he has to fight Bilal, which is not great news, frankly. Kamaru Usman, bad year, dude. That is, what a fall from grace. What a terrible year for that. Because Kamaru went from being the pound-for-pound best fighter in the UFC to he didn't get a single win this year. Lost to Leon Edwards, lost to Khamzat Chimaev. You can argue that the Khamzat Chimaev fight was a draw, but again, you don't want that to happen. Has said that he will never fight in a 3-round fight for the rest of his career. This is a bad year. This is probably the lowest Kamaru Usman has ever been. I'm really interested to see where we go from here, but at the same time, I don't think we're gonna go much higher. I'm sorry. But yeah, bad year for Kamaru. Ian Gary. I'm going to say decent. Let me explain, because understand that Ian Gary... Okay, if Ian Gary was able to fight Vicente Luque, and the wife stuff never came out, he would actually have had a great year. But the reason I'm going to say decent is because he went from fighting on the early prelims to fighting Vicente Luque. Like, that puts you in a title picture. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Ian Gary. I like the way he fights. He went from an early prelim spot all the way up to going into a title picture, which is crazy. However, wasn't able to fight Vicente Luque, so that automatically drops him from great to good, and then the wife stuff comes out, which drops him from good to decent. Not a bad year. If he ended up being able to fight Vicente Luque and then got viciously KO'd, bad year. But dude had a good year if you look at it from a prospect point of view. I'm going to save Strickland for the end. Dricus du Plessis had a good year. Dricus du Plessis has gone from like, oh yeah, Dricus, cool, to being a fan favorite. Like, ever since him and Guru got together, I mean, like, that really helped Dricus's public opinion. That went up. And you had people like Guru, Tracy, and even me advocate for Dricus to fight for the title next after Israel's loss to Strickland. I would say he had a good year, and now he's going to be fighting Strickland next in January, and he can win that fight. I don't know. I'm going to give my prediction when we get closer to the event, but I'm going to say he had a good year. Strickland had the best year out of everybody. I already made a video going in-depth into this, but I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. We started off the year as Strickland being the unofficial journeyman of the middleweight division, coming off a loss to Jared Gordon that he... Not Jared Gordon, oh my lord. Jared Cannonier, that he arguably should have won. But I'm not going to argue robbery. It was a close fight, not a robbery. And then fights on 1 month's notice, one of the first time that's ever happened in modern MMA. Beats up Imavov, then fights Abbas Magomedov, a fight that they wanted him to lose. Beats Abbas, doesn't get the title shot. They want to give it to Dricus. Dricus says no. Strickland fights Israel Adesanya. Pulls off the biggest upset of the entire year against Israel Adesanya and outstrikes him for 5 rounds and is the new middleweight champion of the world. Best year out of everybody else. I don't even think that's controversial. I think I did really good with this list. If you think I'm off on any of these, and I know I left a lot of people out, but the problem is if I included everybody who had a good, decent, or great year, we would literally have every single fighter that has fought this year. So I'm going to keep it with the noteworthy ones for the sake of me, for the sake of you watching it. I hope you enjoy this content. Please consider a like, comment, subscribe, helps me in the algorithm. With that out of the way, thank you for watching. Adios, guys.